I wrote this paper, You Have No Need for Panic, for my brother and my brother-in-law, knowing full well that they probably would not pay heed. I've written a couple of times, and I've spoken publicly a couple of times about denial. And denial is not a river in Egypt. Denial is a very predictable human response. The first time I ran into it as an adult was in Vietnam in the fall of 1967. I mentioned earlier that I was knowledgeable and preparing for the Tet Offensive I knew was coming. Now, if you can imagine, ladies and gentlemen, I was in a small unit, psychological warfare. We had maybe 80 guys. Most of these guys were doing stuff like making the trucks run, running the printing presses, administrative things, and so forth. There was 4 of us that worked in intelligence, 4 of us out of those 80 men. Imagine you're working with a guy who has access to privileged and classified information, and he tells you that we're going to be attacked. And you know, because you already know it, that you don't have enough ammunition, you don't have enough food, and the guy you're working with tells you better be stocking up on extra food, you better be stocking up on extra ammunition. And that's what I did. I told the men I worked with, I said, guys are going to hit us, they're going to hit us hard with everything they got. The Army's not taking care of us. The Army's not providing us extra food. The Army's not providing us with extra ammunition. You need to be doing this yourself. In September, October, November, December, I'm telling these men the same thing. Almost none of them paid heed. A few did, most didn't. That was my first introduction to denial, and my first awareness that people don't want to hear bad news and they're not going to act on bad news. And I can tell the people in this audience, and I can tell the people watching this movie, that most people you talk to are going to respond the same way. Even though you give them the evidence, even though you can show them the printout from Google, the news articles that the CIA is moving half of everything they've got from Langley, Virginia to Denver for no apparent reason. No reason that they're willing to talk about anyway. Operational reasons, all right. Tens of millions of dollars to move these people from Langley, Virginia to Denver, Colorado. One of my sponsors on my show, well, actually it's my only sponsor at the moment, he sells freeze-dried food. And he was talking to one of the larger, if I mention the name you would instantly recognize it, one of the larger manufacturers of freeze-dried food in the country. In fact, they may be the largest, I don't know. This was about 6 weeks ago. This is the end of March 2008. So this would have been early to mid-February. And here's what one of the largest manufacturers of freeze-dried food told my friend about 6 weeks ago. Governments, plural, not singular, governments, plural, have come here in the last week or two and bought everything we've got. Everything. Our entire inventory. Anything you want from now on, freeze-dried guy, will be a 6 to 8 week back order minimum, and we can't even promise that. Last minute preparations. There was a story in the news just in the last week about a country storing up tons of corn in a cave, of all things. I guess they don't have silos where they are. In fact, I know this country, and I know they don't have silos. We're seeing some unusual last-minute preparations taking place, and they're happening right now. If I had a better timeline, I would give it to you. I'm not sure anybody has a better timeline. The timeline we know of is enough for me. Knowing that we'll get through 2008 pretty well, and most likely make it for 2009 pretty well, that's okay for me. I'll take that 21 months and run with it. Absolutely I will. And every month after that is a blessing from God to do a little bit more and talk to a few more people. Every month after that's a blessing from God and be living on borrowed time, in my opinion. A little bit about Professor McCanning and what's causing all this to happen. Because I kind of touched on this a couple of times and we need a bit more detail. As opposed to what NASA says, our solar system is not electrically neutral, as NASA says, but it is electrically charged. In fact, Professor McCanney refers to our solar system as being a massive solar capacitor. And any large object that comes into our solar system will start discharging that capacitor. And that's when the problems start, and it's already happening. This large body that we talked about earlier is interacting electrically and with gravity with our sun and with us directly. All weather, and this is mentioned in the film, The Day After Tomorrow, all weather except for small areas, and we talk about man-made weather, but man-made manipulation of weather can affect a couple hundred square miles for a relatively short period of time. That's what man-made weather can do. But otherwise, all weather on this planet is a consequence of energy coming at us from our sun. In the film The Day After Tomorrow, there was an actor acting as a NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, acting as a NOAA scientist, and he makes this statement: the only place energy like this can come from, and at this level, is our sun. And that's a true, scientifically true statement. The sun is what's causing our weather to become so bizarre and so strange. Energy from our sun. And our sun is truly going ballistic and going bizarre, becoming bizarre. We've known for many decades that our sun goes through an 11-year cycle. 11 years of increasing solar activity to a high point, and 11 years of decreasing activity to a low point. When it got to the top of the 11-year cycle about 5 years ago, it didn't peak, it kept getting higher and higher to the point where all the instrumentation that they had set up to measure solar activity had to be recalibrated. They couldn't even measure it. They had to mathematically extrapolate to get the answers they were looking for what our sun was doing. And right now, in March of 2008, our sun is doing some very bizarre and very strange things, which is causing our weather to be very bizarre and do very strange things all over the earth. And it's happening right in front of our faces. And it will continue to happen. I urge people to get Professor McCanney's books, read his books, and listen to his radio show. Professor McCanney is a scientist who knows what's going on and is willing to talk about it. There are scientists in the government who know about these matters, but they don't talk publicly about them. It would be the end of their careers. There is occasionally a slip of the tongue. I'll give you an example of a slip of the tongue. There is a program for civilians to be trained to observe weather and report back to the county sheriff's office what they observed. Skywarn. Now, a lady friend of mine, she's an electrical engineer, she took the Skywarn class in St. Louis County in the fall of 2006. This was just after Hurricane Katrina. And during a break, this NOAA scientist, they're a young 36 or so year old scientist, he's out there in the hallway on this break. And a lot of talk about hurricanes, because we just had a major hurricane. And he made this statement: just wait till you start seeing these hurricanes forming over land. Whoa, hurricanes don't form over land. You can't graduate from weather school and become a meteorologist and even think that or believe that. My friend tried to ask a follow-up question. The young NOAA scientist knew that if he said anything else, his career and pension would be at risk, so he shut up right then. But we've since seen at least one hurricane over Oklahoma. It was about a year ago. The classic cyclonic type storm, about 50 to 100 miles wide with a well-formed eye and winds in excess of 75 miles an hour. That's the definition of a hurricane. Cyclonic storm covers a wide area with a well-formed eye and winds in excess of 75 miles an hour. Over Oklahoma about a year ago in 2007.